Azura Queen's master. They are asking for her forgiveness? They aren't enemies but master and disciple? Yang Yi was quite stunned at this moment. Bang! Suddenly, the spirit energy in the surroundings suddenly surged madly in Yang Yi's direction, and then they entered the woman. Yang Yi was shocked because he noticed that the spirit energy in an extraordinarily huge area was surging towards him and entered the woman. Moreover, he noticed that the spirit energy actually had threads of violet energy mixed within it. Yang Yi knew that it was probably the quintessence violet energy of this world. The woman slowly started to float up from Yang Yi's back. As spirit energy surged endlessly into her, Yang Yi noticed that the injuries on her bare feet and hands were actually healing. Yang Yi glanced at her, and then he moved backwards slowly and was about to leave. However, Azura Queen suddenly obstructed his path. A human! Azura Queen's voice resounded from beneath her mask. While her voice was calm, Yang Yi was able to sense coldness within it. Yang Yi nodded and said, "Don't worry. I'll be leaving right away." Presently, he only wanted to return to the academy as soon as possible and not waste any time here. Azura Queen continued, "The tree of creation vanished because of you?" Yang Yi's eyes narrowed slightly, and he knew that it was impossible to leave peacefully anymore. Yang Yi had always upheld the principle of seizing the initiative to gain the upper hand, so he swung his sword swiftly, and a strand of sword energy shot forward from the tip of his sword. However, it was blasted apart by an invisible force before it could even arrive before Azura Queen. However, Yang Yi was a few thousand kilometers away. His speed far surpassed Saint's when boosted by the laws of speed and the dark sword wings. Azura Queen's eyes narrowed slightly, and she was about to pursue him. However, she suddenly stopped while a trace of bewilderment appeared in her eyes. Because Yang Yi, who'd just fled, had returned abruptly. I think that we should talk about it." Yang Yi spoke in a very serious manner. "Fighting and fleeing won't be able to solve the problem, right?" Azura Queen's eyes still carried a trace of bewilderment. However, it faded quite a bit when she looked not too far behind Yang Yi. Because a black-clothed figure had suddenly appeared behind Yang Yi. The corners of Yang Yi's mouth twitched when he sensed the arrival of the black-clothed figure. He'd thought that his speed was swift, but he noticed that it was far inferior to Light Maiden. It wasn't just his speed. There was even a huge gap in their strengths. Her attacks were so swift that even he couldn't see them, so he had no choice but to get back here. In any case, Azura Queen hated humans, so she might dislike the sight of Light Maiden and kill Light Maiden first. Yang Yi was quite curious about whether Light Maiden or the number 1 expert of the prefecture, Azura Queen, was stronger. Another human. Azura Queen's voice carried undisguised coldness and killing intent. Light Maiden paid no attention to Azura Queen and gazed at Yang Yi instead. At this moment, Yang Yi's pupils constricted, and then an explosion resounded from him. After that, he was pushed over 300 m back. He looked down when he stopped himself, and there was a mark on the sword armor. Yang Yi's eyes narrowed slightly while an extremely solemn expression appeared within them. Light Maiden's attack speed was too terrifying, and he might have been instantly killed if it wasn't for the sword armor. "It's impolite to not reciprocate." Yang Yi roared furiously as he transformed into a ray of light that vanished on the spot. He was in front of Light Maiden when he appeared again. At the same time, yellow swings stabbed straight at her head. However, a barrier of light suddenly appeared in front of him when his sword was about to come close to her, and it stopped his sword. Clang! Yellow springs shook violently, but it only took an instant for Yang Yi to pull it back slightly and stab forcefully again. Bang! This time, the barrier of light wasn't able to stop Yang Yi's sword and was blasted apart. "Your control of strength isn't bad." Light Maiden spoke abruptly before gesturing. The shattered barrier of light suddenly transformed into numerous blades of light that shot towards Yang Yi. They were truly too swift to the point Yang Yi couldn't dodge them at all. Fortunately, he'd been in a highly vigilant state since the battle began, so void rank sword intent had surged out from him when she attacked. At the same time, the sword armor he wore transformed into countless rays of light that shot towards those blades of light. The blades of light were instantly drowned beneath the swords from Yang Ye's armor. Bang! Bang! Numerous explosions resounded incessantly, and it didn't take long for the blades of light to vanish, while Yang Ye's sword needles continued forward towards Light Maiden. Void rank sword intent. There was a trace of surprise in Light Maiden's eyes. She waved her hand lightly, and then countless beams of light suddenly shot forward. They were extremely powerful and instantly dispersed the sword intent on those sword needles before blasting them back towards Yang Yi. Yang Ye's pupils constricted. He waved his right hand, and those sword needles immediately returned to him and transformed into the sword armor that was around him just a moment ago. At the same time, numerous blades of light suddenly appeared around him, and they left him no room to escape. After that, they instantly enveloped him. However, the shadow behind the black-robed woman suddenly wriggled, and then Yang Yi appeared behind her before his fist shot towards the back of her head. Light Maiden's figure stiffened for an instant. Obviously, she hadn't expected Yang Yi to suddenly utilize the laws of darkness. However, she didn't panic. An array of light suddenly surged out from within her and shot towards Yang Ye's fist, when Yang Ye's fist was about to strike her head. Bang! The ray of light was instantly blasted apart, but it only took an instant for countless blades of light to suddenly smash against Yang Yi and blast him flying. Yang Yi glanced at himself. At this moment, his sword armor was covered in marks, and he finally understood why the woman had said that even 10 saints couldn't be a match for Light Maiden while there was light. It was because anywhere with light was filled with energy that she could use. If he didn't possess void rank sword intent and the sword armor, then he wouldn't be a match for her at all. Suddenly, Azura Queen spoke. "You're Light Maiden from the Nether Pavilion." However, Light Maiden disregarded Azura Queen and gazed at Yang Yi. Covered in divine rank treasures. One who relies on external sources of strength is nothing worth mentioning. She was about to attack again when she spoke up to this point. Suddenly, Azura Queen raised her hand and slapped it in Light Maiden's direction. A huge palm tore through space and clawed at Light Maiden. The tiny isle below Light Maiden instantly collapsed, and the powerful force of Azura Queen's attack caused the space in a huge area around Light Maiden to warp severely. Yang Ye's eyelids twitched when he witnessed this scene. As expected of the #1 expert of Pine Prefecture. But is she not afraid of causing the Heaven Dao to target her? After all, Light Maiden is a saint too. Bang! Meanwhile, numerous beams of light rained down from the sky, and they struck against the huge palm. Both attacks trembled violently, and then suddenly exploded apart. Countless waves of energy swept towards the surroundings, and the powerful aftershock from their collision caused huge waves to surge up on the ocean below. The corners of Yang Ye's mouth twitched. He paid no further attention to them and turned around with the intention of leaving. However, the woman whom Azura Queen called Master suddenly appeared in front of him. Yang Yi was at a loss for words. She glanced at him, and then she gazed at Light Maiden. "Leave!" Azura Queen immediately abandoned her intention to continue attacking when she heard the woman, and then she walked to the woman's side like an obedient disciple. Yang Yi was simply stunned by this scene. Light Maiden said, "He must die." Yang Ye's face darkened. Isn't she a little too overbearing? I merely comprehended the laws of darkness, yet she insists on killing me? Yang Yi could only imagine what would happen if Light Maiden knew that he'd killed Shadow Maiden. The woman's voice remained calm. "I said leave." Light Maiden was rather stubborn. "What if I refuse?" After all, she was a member of the Nether Pavilion, so why should she care about the opinion of others? The woman nodded lightly, and then she raised her right hand and grasped it in Light Maiden's direction. A shocking scene appeared. The light in an area of over 10,000 kilometers suddenly vanished at a noticeable speed, and it took less than 3 breaths of time for no light to exist in that area. While light still remained in the distant sky, it was like that light was obstructed by something and couldn't descend here. A domain. Yang Yi was astounded because it was the might of a domain. It was the first time he'd seen a true domain besides his own. A domain. There was astonishment in Light Maiden's voice, and it was accompanied by a trace of terror. You're You're the one they call the lady who roams the world." The woman waved her right hand, and a mouthful of blood sprayed from Light Maiden before her figure was blasted flying. In the blink of an eye, Light Maiden had transformed into a black dot that vanished into the sky. The woman's ghastly voice resounded through the world. "I'll give Nether Pavilion face and won't kill you. You're prohibited from stepping foot into Pine Prefecture from now onwards. Otherwise, I'll obliterate you." Meanwhile, tempestuous waves were surging through Xianxia's heart. A domain. I saw a domain. So a domain is that terrifying. At this moment, Xianxia realized that it wasn't his sword domain that was weak. It was he who hadn't truly grasped its ability. Meanwhile, the woman suddenly turned around to look at Xianxia and said, "We should resolve our business now." "What business?" Xianxia's eyelids twitched. "Does she intend to get even with me now that we're safe?" The woman spoke calmly. "I remember you said that we'll fight in single combat once we escape. If you win, then we'll let bygones be bygones, and if I win, then I can do anything I wish to you. Now you can strike the first blow." The corners of Xianxia's mouth twitched, and a short while passed before he laughed bitterly. "I admit defeat. What a joke." Even Light Maiden couldn't resist a single attack from the woman. As for him, he couldn't even defeat Light Maiden. The woman nodded lightly, but she didn't say anything and just fell silent. Xianxia glanced at her and said, "I don't understand something. Since you're Azura Queen's master, then why were you locked up there? Moreover, you were even sealed." She shook her head slightly. "I sealed myself." Xianxia was puzzled. "Why?" She gazed at him, pondered deeply for an instant, and said, "I'm too powerful, and this world isn't able to endure it." Xianxia was speechless. The woman said, "Since you've admitted defeat, then I'll make my request. I can spare you, but I want that tiny pagoda of yours." Xianxia's expression instantly changed violently when he heard her. He gazed at her for a short while, and then he suddenly transformed into a ray of light that vanished into the sky. Azura Queen took a step forward when she witnessed this scene, and she was about to go after Xianxia. However, the woman stopped Azura Queen and said, "I'll do it." As soon as she finished speaking, her figure vanished on the spot. Xianxia hadn't expected that she would actually want the primordial pagoda. Could he give it to her? Of course not. Not to mention that he couldn't control the primordial pagoda. He absolutely couldn't give it to her even if he could, because Su Qingshi and the others were still within it. Her request allowed him to realize that he absolutely couldn't let others become awake of the primordial pagoda's existence in the future. Of course, he'd thought that while there had been some misunderstandings between them, they'd experienced life and death together, so they were at least partially friends by now. But the facts of the situation told him that she hadn't taken him to be a friend at all. Everything she'd done in that world had been done so that he could bring her out of it. Kill her while she was still in that world? That thought had appeared in Xianxia's mind. After all, he knew how irresistible the primordial pagoda was. However, it hadn't taken him long to reject that thought. Because while she seemed to possess no strength at all, it was actually as she'd said. She merely couldn't utilize it, and it wasn't that she didn't possess any. Moreover, Xianxia would definitely die if she used her strength. Obviously, the woman hadn't lied to him. Xianxia didn't continue flying in the air. He descended to the ground and utilized the sword domain to conceal his aura. Because even if he concealed his aura, it was still too dangerous to fly. After all, he would still be a huge target. Conversely, there were countless things on the ground which he could use to hide himself, and that naturally made it more difficult for her to catch him. However, out of consideration for the woman's strength, Xianxia acted even more carefully. He chose to travel solely in the shadows and utilized the laws of darkness to transform himself into a part of those shadows. The combination of the sword domain and the laws of darkness allowed Xianxia to feel slightly confident in his ability to escape. At this moment, he just wanted to return to Ocean of Cloud City as soon as possible. After all, he'd been trapped in that world for so long, and he wondered how the situation was like in the city. When he thought up to that point, he couldn't help but speed up, but it didn't take long for him to suddenly stop. Because a woman had suddenly appeared around 100 m ahead. She wore a snow-white dress, had eyes that were clear like autumn dew and absolutely calm, and supple and pure white skin. Her entire body was covered in a faint and indistinct glow, and she seemed like a heavenly and otherworldly goddess. She was none other than Azura Queen's master. Yang Yi was still hiding in the shadows. He'd merged into one with the shadow of a tree, and coupled with the effects of the sword domain, it could be said that even a saint that passed right by him wouldn't be able to notice his presence. However, he knew that she'd noticed his presence. Yang Yi pondered deeply for a moment, and then he stepped forward instead of choosing to flee. Flee? The cruel reality before him told him that he couldn't accomplish that, and he would only be wasting time. Are you really going to do this? Yang Yi walked to her and looked her in the eyes. She gazed at him for a long time before she said, I need that tiny pagoda. Yang Yi replied, It's mine. She looked him in the eye, and her voice remained calm yet carried ghastly coldness. If I want, it would be mine right now. Yang Yi asked, Then why aren't you taking it? She answered, I hope that you'll give it to me yourself. Why? Yang Yi was puzzled. Based on the strength you've shown, it would have been yours by now if you took it by force, right? She remained silent. Yang Yi gazed at her for a long time, and he spoke when she seemed to have no intention to say anything. What if I refuse? She replied. Then I'll take it by force. Yang Yi gazed at her. Quite some time passed before a faint red glow emerged from within him. At the same time, his eyes and hair started to turn blood red. Bang! Suddenly, a beam of blood shot into the air from within Yang Yi, and it pierced the sky. In an instant, the entire sky had turned blood red as if the end of the world had arrived. Meanwhile, a blood-red sword that seemed as if it was forged from blood had appeared in Yang Yi's grasp. Ha ha ha! Yang Yi, you're finally unable to stop yourself from utilizing me. Good. Very good. Ha ha ha. Come. Don't resist me and accept my power. Let's join forces and slaughter a myriad of worlds. Heaven's gravestone's insane voice resounded. Yang Yi had no other choice but to summon Heaven's gravestone when he faced this woman who was strong like a god. Even though he'd summoned Heaven's gravestone and might be enslaved by it, he didn't have any chance to defeat her without summoning Heaven's gravestone. Bang! Void rank slaughter intent instantly surged out from within Yang Yi and instantly suppressed his void rank slaughter intent. At the same time, a blood-red glow surged out incessantly from within Yang Yi, and it swept towards the surroundings, causing an area of around 5,000 kilometers to be covered in a blood-red glow. It was transformed into a world of blood red. However, the area the woman resided in remained normal as the blood-red glow wasn't able to get 3M within her. The woman's jet-black brows were pressed together slightly when she saw Yang Yi in such a state. Meanwhile, there wasn't a shred of clarity left in Yang Yi's eyes. The blood-red sword in his grasp had cut open the center of his palm, and his blood was surging incessantly into the sword. As more and more blood surged into it, the blood-red sword grew more and more solid. Slash! Suddenly, Yang Yi raised the blood-red sword and swung it at the woman. The space in an area of 3 kilometers around it was instantly blasted into pieces. However, such a terrifying strike had been stopped by just 2 fingers. Relying on external forces isn't the right way. As soon as she finished speaking, the blood-red sword exploded into pieces. At the same time, the woman took a step forward and tapped her finger against the center of Yang Yi's forehead. Get back in there! As soon as she finished speaking, a mysterious force surged out from the tip of her finger and seeped into the center of Yang Yi's brows. Meanwhile, Heaven's gravestone's miserable and shrill cry resounded. Who are you? Who exactly are you? It's impossible for such strength to be possessed in this world. Stop right now. Heaven's gravestone's voice gradually weakened. In the end, it vanished completely. Meanwhile, the blood-red glow which filled the sky surged back into Yang Yi like a receding tide, and it didn't take long for Yang Yi to return to normal. However, he was in a weakened state. She gazed at Yang Yi and said, You're too weak right now, so it's best not to summon it. Otherwise, I'll completely enslave you, and you'll cease to be yourself. Yang Yi replied, You're not a saint. He'd thought that while her strength was terrifying, she should still be a saint and was just a saint who possessed strength that far surpassed ordinary saints. Yet now he knew that he was wrong. If she was just a saint, then it would have been impossible for her to suppress heaven's gravestone with such ease. After all the saints of the ancient sword school hadn't been able to do anything that day. Yet now she just tapped lightly and suppressed it. That was almost on par with the tiny vortex. She said, If you want to truly gain control over that sword, then you must strengthen your own will. The only way you can do that is by ceaselessly utilizing stellar energy to temper your body until you grow accustomed to the backlash you suffer from it. At that time, your will should be sufficiently strong to avoid being affected by that sword. Yang Yi took a deep breath and said, I can't give the pagoda to you, she replied. You seem to not have the ability to resist. Yang Yi looked at her in the eye and said, I have the Qiong Qi. He would have to release the Qiong Qi if she gave him no other choice. She looked him in the eyes for a long time and shook her head in the end. While his strength is formidable, he's extremely weak right now. Of course, I'm not at my peak as well. However, he can't do anything to me. But he can deal with you. You'll be the first to die if you release him. Yang Yi said, I might die as well even if I don't release him, right? She sized him up for a short while, and then she made a clenching motion in his direction. In an instant, a shapeless force instantly enveloped Yang Yi, and he noticed that he was actually unable to move while being enveloped by it. At this moment, it didn't matter whether he tried to utilize his techniques, sword intent, or profound energy. He couldn't do anything. After that, she stretched out her hand and pointed her palm towards Yang Ye's stomach before a mysterious force surged out from within it. At the same time, Yang Ye's face warped. It hurt. It wasn't inferior to the backlash from utilizing stellar energy, and he felt like his internal organs, meridians, and even blood were about to be taken out of him. However, he didn't make a sound. He just stared fixedly at her. She'd allowed him to truly realize that the weak didn't have the right to speak, and he'd realized how helpless the weak were. This was how the weak were before the strong. If the strong wanted to take something from them, then they could only watch helplessly. Meanwhile, the tiny vortex suddenly revolved, and then a wave of invisible energy surged out from within it and traveled through Yang Yi to blast itself against the woman. However, she seemed to have been ready for it, and she waved her other hand lightly when the energy had only just emerged from Yang Yi. In an instant, the energy was completely dispersed. However, her countenance had instantly turned ghastly pale. Obviously, while she'd been able to disperse the tiny vortex's attack, it took quite a toll on her. She pressed her palm against Yang Ye's stomach, and the suction force grew stronger. Yang Ye's eyes immediately opened wide while threads of blood instantly covered them. Besides that, his face was utterly warped, and it could be said that even someone like Yu Wushuang wouldn't be able to recognize his face right now. It didn't take long for Yang Yi to notice that the tiny vortex was actually starting to move. Is it really going to be taken from me today? Even though it hurt to the point he almost lost consciousness, Yang Yi was still able to clearly sense the tiny vortex moving within him. He knew that it was about to leave him. What about Su Qingshi and the others who are still in it? Yang Ye's eyes were filled with a ferocious gaze when he thought up to this point. At this moment, he couldn't care about anything else and was about to summon Qiong Qi. However, he was astounded to realize that he couldn't do it, because a mysterious force had completely sealed off all his strength. So, not to mention his profound energy, he couldn't even lift a finger. Bang! Meanwhile, Yang Yi felt like his head was about to explode, and then it felt heavy as he lost consciousness. At the same time, the woman suddenly stopped. As soon as she did, the tiny vortex which had left Yang Ye's dantian instantly went right back to where it had been. She just gazed silent at him. Suddenly, a wave of ripples appeared in the space behind the woman, and then Azura Queen appeared behind her. Azura Queen asked, "Master, why have you stopped?" A long moment of silence ensued before the woman replied, "It has fused with his soul. They live and die together." He'll die if I take it by force. Azura Queen said, It's just a lowly human. So what if he dies? The woman suddenly turned around to gaze at Azura Queen, but she didn't speak a word. At the same time, Azura Queen's delicate figure trembled, and she hurriedly knelt down on the spot. A long time passed before the woman waved her right hand, and a strand of energy supported Azura Queen up. Azura Queen glanced at the woman and didn't dare speak a word. Meanwhile, the woman turned around to gaze at Xianxia, who'd slumped to the ground, and a long time passed before she said, Let's leave. Azura Queen said, But what about thee? It's fine. I've suppressed it for now, and I'll find a way in the future. As soon as she finished speaking, her figure vanished on the spot. Azura Queen walked over to Xianxia once the woman left, and she gazed at Xianxia for a long time while a trace of coldness gradually appeared in her eyes. However, she didn't do anything. She just took a deep and long glance at Xianxia, and then she vanished on the spot. One day later, Xianxia's figure suddenly started moving, and then around an hour passed before Xianxia opened his eyes slowly. A moment of silence ensued before he sat up swiftly, and then he glanced at the surroundings. I'm still alive? As soon as he said that, Xianxia seemed to have thought of something and immediately immersed his consciousness into this body. Xianxia instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the tiny vortex, and then he fell once more to the ground. The tiny vortex is fine. It didn't take long for Xianxia to frown. Why is it still with me? Did she give up on taking it? Based on her previous attitude, that isn't very likely. But if she didn't give up, then did the tiny vortex resist her again? However, it didn't take long for Xianxia to refute that thought, because the tiny vortex had subdued the tree of creation, fought the eye of the heaven Tao, and suppressed the Qiong Qi. It could be said to be in an extremely weak state after using its strength so many times. Earlier, it had even tried to stop her at the end, but it had been stopped by the woman. In other words, it was utterly powerless to resist her anymore. If she refused to give up and the tiny vortex hadn't resisted, then why did she give up in the end? Xianxia pondered deeply for a long time, and then he shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Because it was pointless to think about it right now. Xianxia closed his eyes and immersed his consciousness into his body. I know you can hear me, so let's have a proper talk today. Firstly, we have to admit that we were both bullied, and we were completely defeated. You admit that, right? A moment of silence ensued before the tiny vortex revolved slightly. Xianxia continued when he saw the tiny vortex's response. I'm not willing to accept that. What about you? Are you willing? The tiny vortex spun an entire circle leftwards before spinning an entire circle to the right. Obviously, it was expressing its unwillingness. All right, we've come to an agreement. Xianxia continued. Now, let's talk about how we'll resolve this. Firstly, you should have realized that it's pointless no matter how strong you become. Because if I'm not strong, then capturing me is equivalent to capturing you. So, not only do you have to work hard on recovering, you have to help me grow stronger. Of course, I understand that I have to rely on myself to become stronger, but I hope that you try your best to help me if it's possible. After a long moment of silence, 5 rays of golden light suddenly flashed out from within the tiny vortex, and then 5 golden fruits appeared in front of Xianxia. Fruits of creation. It was the fruits of creation the tiny vortex had obtained upon subduing the tree of creation that day. Xianxia took them, remained silent for quite some time, and then asked, Can you let me enter the primordial pagoda? Based on his current strength, he would definitely be able to access the 3rd level of the pagoda if he could enter it. There were definitely things in the 3rd level which could help him. Besides that, the primordial pagoda had another ability, and it was the ability to help him conceal himself when his life was in danger. So long as he could hide in the pagoda, he was confident that even that woman from before would definitely be unable to locate him. Besides that, the primordial pagoda was filled with huge amounts of primordial violet energy, and his strength would definitely rise quickly if he could get in the pagoda. However, Xianxia was disappointed, because the tiny vortex spun to the left then right, and Xianxia knew that it couldn't. Of course, he knew that the tiny vortex wasn't doing it on purpose, and it was probably because the tiny vortex had encountered some sort of problem. That was why he couldn't enter the primordial pagoda. Xianxia asked solemnly, "What do I do to help you recover?" The tiny vortex started spinning. Around 2 hours passed before Xianxia figured out what it meant. It said that he had to become strong. So long as he grew stronger, it would be able to recover. In short, its speed of recovery depended on him. Xianxia took a deep breath, and then his gaze descended onto the fruits of creation. He remembered that the woman had said that the fruits of creation weren't just able to provide a huge improvement in one's cultivation, it could improve treasures. That was absolutely heaven-defying. Because besides a select few treasures which could grow, the rest had a fixed level of quality, and it was practically impossible to raise their quality. For example, a rock could be sanded down to an extremely smooth rock, but he was still a rock. Couldn't transform into gold. But the fruit of creation could change the quality of a treasure. If it was true, then it really deserved the name creation. Even though he wanted to give it a try, Xianxia restrained himself in the end. He only had 5 of them, so he couldn't use them on treasures for now. Xianxia raised his head to look towards the direction of Ocean of Cloud City, and then he withdrew a talisman and crushed it. Quite some time passed before ripples arose in the space before him, and then Yu Wushuang's voice resounded. "I'm finally able to contact you. Where did you go? Are you all right? Where are you now?" Xianxia's heart felt warm when he heard this, and he heaved a slight sigh of relief, because it seemed like Ocean of Cloud City was fine. He withdrew a talisman and crushed it before he said, "Everything is fine. How's the city?" Yu Wushuang replied, "It's fine for now. Everyone thinks that you're in closed-door cultivation." Xianxia nodded. "I'll rush back right now." "Okay," Yu Wushuang said. "Right. I heard Lu Qianxiao is almost done with his closed-door cultivation. Supposedly, Sky Divine Hall has already started preparing his wedding. The person he's marrying seems to be in Nanjing and an elder of Sky Divine Hall, Mu Hanzhun." Xianxia's eyes narrowed when he heard this, and he pondered deeply for a long time before he crushed another transmission talisman. "All right. It'll take me a day at most to get back." Xianxia's face was utterly gloomy as he finished speaking. "Marry in Nanjing? You're going to be an eunuch." Xianxia's figure vanished into the sky once he finished speaking. Ocean of Cloud City. Outside the city, 2 men in white robes and a woman in a moon-white dress suddenly appeared not too far from the city. "Kaiyang Jun, that's Ocean of Cloud City." The man on the left who had a sword hanging on his waist gazed at the city and smiled. "Even though it's quite small, it's not bad. In any case, we're just having fun." The man in the center of the group glanced at the man with the sword. "Qin Yuan, we aren't here to have fun. The elders gave us an assignment, and we'll definitely have to suffer from now on if we can't finish it. We'll definitely suffer a huge reduction to the resources we gain every month." "You think that we can't finish that assignment?" The man called Qin Yuan chuckled. "It's an extraordinary kindness to them, isn't it? I heard that Ocean of Clouds Academy has a dean." The woman in their group spoke abruptly. "It seems to be a young man called Yang something." "Yang Yi," Qin Yuan continued. "I inquired about him earlier, and he has gained a little reputation here." "Right. I heard he's extremely arrogant." The man called Kaiyang Jun suddenly chuckled. "How arrogant?" Qin Yuan said. "I heard he likes to fight as soon as there's even a tiny dispute." Kaiyang Jun chuckled. "What an ignorant fool. He's nothing to be afraid of." The woman said, "What if he refuses? Isn't that easy to resolve? We'll just kill him." A cold smile arose on the corners of Qin Yuan's mouth as he took a few steps forward, and then he raised his right hand and pointed it ahead. As soon as he did that, the sword on his waist transformed into a ray of light that shot swiftly forward. A ray of light flashed by and the city gates exploded into pieces. "From this moment onward, we'll be taking over Ocean of Clouds Academy and Ocean of Cloud City." Qin Yuan's voice resounded through the air above the city. Kaiyang Jun glanced at Qin Yuan and spoke indifferently. "Qin Yuan, won't that seem a little too haughty? Is it?" Qin Yuan glanced at Kaiyang Jun, and then he gazed at the woman, Xingchun. Do you think so too? The woman called Xianxia spoke flatly. A little. Qin Yuan shrugged. I think that I'm keeping a really low profile. Why should we? Meanwhile, Xianxia suddenly spoke. Our law faction should always make a show of strength. Keeping a low profile, that's something that those cowards of the scholarly faction should do. Kaiyang Jun suddenly said, Who do you think the scholarly faction will send this time? No matter who it is, they won't have a chance this time. Qin Yuan spoke indifferently. Even though the benefits we can gather from Ocean of Clouds Academy and Ocean of Cloud City is small, and those old fellows and madmen don't take it seriously, it's still a thick slab of meat for us. It's a rare opportunity for the three of us. If we can grasp it well, then it'll be equivalent to a way for us to gain resources from now on. So, we must take complete control of this academy and city before those fellows from the scholarly faction arrive. Kaiyang Jun said, There are saints here. Qin Yuan laughed with ridicule. Saints? Are you afraid of them? I would be a little fearful if that fellow, Shang Yunxi, was still here. But now, Kaiyang Jun continued, Shang Yunxi was quite a well-known figure in the academy all those years ago. Unfortunately, he overestimated his ability and chose to clash with the academy. He couldn't even realize that he was no match for the academy. Now he's dead. I'm not interested in that old geezer, but I'm interested in his treasury. Qin Yuan spoke flatly. Ocean of Clouds Academy has laid its foundations here since so many years ago, so it has definitely gathered a huge number of treasures. Haha. I'm feeling quite impatient from just thinking about it. Kaiyang Jun had a grin on the corners of his lips as well. I'm looking forward to it a little now. Xing suddenly said, They're here. Yu Wushuang walked out from the city while accompanied by 13 black-clothed figures, and she arrived before Kaiyang Jun's group. What's a little child doing here? Qin Yuan sized her up and chuckled. Kaiyang Jun. Looks like Ocean of Clouds Academy isn't taking us seriously. Yu Wushuang stated. Dean Yang is in closed-door cultivation, and I'm in charge of Ocean of Clouds Academy and City right now. You're in charge. There was a wisp of surprise in their eyes, and then Qin Yuan sized her up carefully before he laughed with ridicule. Does Ocean of Clouds Academy have no one capable left after Shang Yunxi died? It has actually fallen to the point of allowing a little child to manage it? How pitiable. All right, stop wasting time and quickly tell Yang Yi to come see us. Yu Wushuang said, If I'm not wrong, then you should be from the Central Divine Prefecture. As for your identity, all of you are probably from the law faction of White Deer Academy, right? Surprise flashed through their eyes when they heard her. And then Qin Yuan asked, How did you discern that? That isn't important. Yu Wushuang said, What's important is the reason for your arrival. If you're here as guests, then my academy will welcome you warmly. But if you've come looking for trouble, we are here to look for trouble with you. Qin Yuan interrupted Yu Wushuang while he had a mocking smile on the corners of his mouth. Then what would you do? Yu Wushuang looked him in the eyes and said, Then you should bring more forces with you. Ha ha ha. Qin Yuan roared madly with laughter, and both Kaiyang Jun and Xing chuckled as well. They laughed for some time before Qin Yuan pointed at Yu Wushuang and said, Kaiyang Jun, if I'm not wrong, that little girl is saying that we're weak. Alright, I have to admit that we really are nothing in the Central Divine Prefecture. But here, allow me to boast a little. If we're still considered to be weak here, then wouldn't all the geniuses of the Pine Prefecture be weaker than dogs? Don't put it like that. Kaiyang Jun spoke indifferently. Otherwise, countless people would think that we'd come here on purpose to bully the geniuses of Pine Prefecture. Qin Yuan shrugged. I'm not interested in bullying little children. Which one of you will do it? Kaiyang Jun looked at Xing. A moment of silence ensued before Xing suddenly transformed into a ray of light that vanished on the spot, and she was in front of Yu Wushuang when her figure appeared again. However, Yu Wushuang's expression remained unchanged, because the 13 black-clothed figures behind her had stepped forward when Xing attacked. Bang! An explosion resounded, and then Xing returned to where she stood just now. At this moment, her eyes were slightly narrowed while a slightly solemn expression lingered in them. As for Kaiyang-jun and Qin Yuan who stood by her side, there was a trace of surprise in their eyes. Their gazes descended onto the group of black-clothed figures. Kaiyang-jun spoke in a low voice. "Those are puppets." Qin Yuan withdrew the smile on his face. 13 high-rank half-saints, and they are high-grade half-saints that haven't relied on much external forces to gain such strength. Kaiyang-jun gazed at Qin Yuan. "Are you going to deal with them?" "Fine." Qin Yuan laughed coldly and was about to attack. Meanwhile, a few hundred beams of light suddenly shot out from the city, and it didn't take long for them to arrive behind Yu Wushuang. All of them were high-rank half-saints. Yu Wushuang glanced at them and said, "All of you aren't welcome here, so just go back to where you came from. Are you trying to bully us with numbers?" Qin Yuan laughed coldly, and then he gazed at Kaiyang-jun. The latter pondered deeply for a moment, and then he spun the ring on his finger. In an instant, 13 rays of golden light flashed, and then 13 copper figures appeared here. 13 saints. Yu Wushuang and the others revealed grim expressions when they witnessed this scene. Qin Yuan walked over to Yu Wushuang, and he gazed at her as he said, "From this moment onward, it doesn't matter who is in control of Ocean of Clouds Academy, because we'll be taking over from now on. So, does anyone have any objections? If you do, then you can voice them, but I don't guarantee that I will listen to you." Ha ha ha. Meanwhile, Instructor Zhua and the other saints arrived by Yu Wushuang's side. Instructor Zhua said, "Before this, the dean didn't hesitate to ignite his soul and detonate himself to kill the members of your law faction. Now, if it's required, the 4 of us will detonate ourselves at any moment. So, do you want to try us?" Qin Yuan had quite a ferocious expression on his face. "Old fellow, are you trying to scare us?" Instructor Zhua replied, "Want to give it a try?" Qin Yuan was about to say something when Kaiyang-jun suddenly said, "Elder, I think you've misunderstood. We aren't here to crush Ocean of Clouds Academy. Conversely, we're here to help it." Instructor Zhua laughed coldly. "Is that so?" "Of course." Kaiyang-jun said, "Ocean of Clouds Academy was established by Dean Shang, and he was once a student of my White Deer Academy. So, Ocean of Clouds Academy can be considered to be part of my White Deer Academy. Haven't all of you always wanted to return to White Deer Academy? Now your chance is here. We're here to let all of you return to White Deer Academy." Instructor Zhua and the others were stunned by these words. "They're here to let us return to White Deer Academy? You're saying that we can head to the Central Divine Prefecture?" Instructor Zhua's voice was trembling slightly. Returning to White Deer Academy hadn't just been Shang Yunqi's lifetime dream. It was theirs as well. So, they were naturally excited when they heard the man. "No," Kaiyang-jun continued. "We're only giving all of you a chance." Instructor Zhua frowned. "What are you trying to say?" Kaiyang-jun said, "I'm saying that Ocean of Clouds Academy and Ocean of Cloud City will be under White Deer City from now on. To put it in simpler terms, Ocean of Clouds Academy and Ocean of Cloud City are property of my White Deer Academy in Pine Prefecture. As for all of you, based on your current strength, you can naturally return to White Deer Academy. But the rest of the students can't. Of course, we won't make it impossible for them. We'll set up tests here, and any student who satisfies the requirements to enter our White Deer Academy will be allowed to join our academy." Instructor Zhua had excitement all over his face. "Really?" Kaiyang-jun replied. "We're here on behalf of White Deer Academy, so would we joke about things like this?" Meanwhile, Yu Wushuang suddenly said, "I remember that your law faction intended to destroy our academy. Why has it changed its mind now? Shang Yunqi is dead." Kaiyang-jun spoke indifferently. "My law faction wanted to eliminate him, so we definitely won't pursue the matter anymore now that he's dead. My White Deer Academy had intended to eliminate the academy he left behind so that it wouldn't spoil the reputation of my White Deer Academy. But the heavens are benevolent, and my White Deer Academy doesn't want to go to such extremes. So, we're willing to give all of you a chance." Yu Wushuang said, "That chance is that all of you only have to speak a few words, and you'll obtain everything in the academy and city, right? There's no gain without pain. Are you unaware of that principle?" Kaiyang-jun spoke indifferently. Otherwise, why would my White Deer Academy give all of you a chance to return to our academy? After all, my White Deer Academy wasn't interested in the so-called geniuses of this place. Yet now, we're willing to give all of you an opportunity. That's an extraordinary kindness and opportunity to all of you. Yu Wushuang didn't pay any further attention to Kaiyang Jun. She gazed at Instructor Zhua and said, "The dean sought to return to White Deer Academy all his life, but he hoped that we returned with our dignity, and not through the handouts of others." "You want to return with dignity?" Kaiyang Jun laughed coldly. "You intend to ceaselessly send students to participate in the competition of my White Deer Academy, just like Xianxia had? How laughable. You've seen the outcome. Has he ever not returned in miserable defeat for the last 1,000 years? But our heads have always been held up high." Yu Wushuang gazed at Instructor Zhua. "Instructor Zhua, Yang Yi won't agree to it." "He won't agree?" Qin Yuan laughed coldly. "Isn't that easy to resolve? We'll just kill him." Kaiyang Jun said, "Perhaps all of you aren't aware of the situation you're in. Presently, we aren't seeking your opinion. There are only two paths in front of all of you. Either submit or die. To be honest, our law faction doesn't even have to dispatch any experts to annihilate your academy. Just the strength we possess is sufficient to accomplish that." Yu Wushuang intended to say something, but Instructor was suddenly said, "Little girl, the four of us have made our decision. We've decided to submit." Yu Wushuang's expression changed. A long time passed before she said, "Yang Yi is the dean. He should be the one to make this decision. He isn't the dean from this moment onward." Kaiyang Jun gazed at Instructor Zhua. "Elder, what do you think?" Instructor Zhua and the other three saints remained silent. Yu Wushuang slowly clenched her fists, because silence was equivalent to tacit approval. "Instructor Zhua, are you really going to remove Yang Yi from his position as dean?" Yu Wushuang gazed at Instructor Zhua and continued, "Yang Yi contributed greatly to bring such peace back to the academy and city. Instructor Zhua, if you join forces with the other three elders to remove him from his position just because of a few words from an outsider, then wouldn't such actions disappoint everyone in the city and academy?" Qin Yuan was about to speak, but Kaiyang Jun stopped him, and then Kaiyang Jun gazed at Yu Wushuang and the others with ridicule in his eyes. Instructor Zhua pondered deeply for a short while and said, "Wushuang, it's a rare opportunity for everyone from our academy, and it is Old Man Shang's lifelong wish. We can't refuse it. As for Yang Yi, we both know his character well, and he isn't suitable to be the dean. If he makes the decision, then he'll probably just lead the academy to its destruction." Yu Wushuang spoke in a low voice. "Instructor Zhua, that wasn't what you said in the past." Instructor Zhua replied, "The circumstances have changed." Yu Wushuang fell silent for a long time, and then she said, "Instructor Zhua, have you forgotten how Dean Shang perished?" Instructor Zhua's face became unsightly. Meanwhile, a black-robed old man by Instructor Zhua's side said, "We've naturally not forgotten Brother Shang's sacrifice. But if we don't submit to White Deer Academy, then tell me where our academy's future lies? It doesn't have a future. If we don't submit, then we won't have a future, right?" Yu Wushuang replied, "So we should just give up the academy and city to others?" Instructor Zhua said, "Our academy's goal is to return to White Deer Academy. Now, it's an absolutely rare opportunity that we have in our hands. So giving up some treasures is nothing. Wushuang, look further into the future. If you're able to join White Deer Academy, you'll realize that all of this is nothing." Yu Wushuang shook her head and said, "Since all of you've made your decision, then I have nothing further to say." Instructor Zhua glanced at Yu Wushuang, and then he sighed softly. "There's no need to act in this way. Based on your natural talent, it isn't impossible for you to join White Deer Academy. It isn't just you, even Yang Yi has a very good chance." Instructor Zhua, "It isn't as simple as you think." Yu Wushuang paid no further attention to them, and she turned around and walked away. Now that Yang Yi wasn't here, she was helpless against their decision. As soon as she turned around and walked away, the other 400-plus high-rank half-saints here didn't hesitate to immediately follow her. Yu Wushuang enjoyed great prestige in Ocean of Cloud City, and coupled with her relationship with Yang Yi, many people had decided to stand by Yu Wushuang, because choosing her was equivalent to choosing Yang Yi. At this moment, perhaps the students of the academy would choose instructor Zhu's side, but the residents of the city would mostly side with Yang Yi. It could be said that Yang Ye's reputation was the greatest in the city right now. Stop right there. Suddenly, Kaiyang Jun called out to Yu Wushuang. Yu Wushuang turned around and gazed at Kaiyang Jun. What? Kaiyang Jun didn't speak. He just waved his right hand, and two copper figures instantly shot forward. The expressions of the others behind Yu Wushuang changed, and they were about to defend her but were stopped by her. At the same time, the 13 black-clothed figures behind her didn't just refrain from attacking. They even transformed into shadows that vanished on the spot. Since no one stopped it, Yu Wushuang was captured with ease. Meanwhile, instructor Zhu's expression changed, and he was about to speak. However, Kaiyang Jun waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, Elder Zhu. I won't kill her. I'm just restraining her temporarily. I'm sure you've realized that she enjoys quite a bit of support in the city, and I'm afraid the residents of the city would turn on us if we don't restrain her. I think that Elder Zhu doesn't want the academy and city to be flooded with blood, right?" Instructor Zhu was visibly struggling for some time before he took a deep breath, and then he turned around to gaze at Yu Wushuang. "Wushuang, calm down for now. I'll get them to release you once we've resolved everything else in the city." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and gazed at Kaiyang Jun. "Don't harm her." "Of course." Kaiyang Jun grinned. "So long as she cooperates, then I won't harm even a hair on her. Right, where's that fellow Yang Yi? If he's in the city, then we have to restrain him as well. I don't want any unnecessary trouble." "That's not advisable," Instructor Zhu hurriedly added. "Yang Yi is a very unyielding and aggressive person. If you act against him, then he'll definitely fight with all of you. I presume that you don't want any extra trouble. So how about we do this? I'll go speak to him myself, and I'll resolve it." Kaiyang Jun grinned. "That's naturally all right, but I hope that you're able to resolve it. Otherwise, we'll use my way to deal with him." Instructor Zhu spoke in a low voice. "I'll deal with it appropriately." Kaiyang Jun nodded and said, "Then that's all for now. Besides that, please submit all the property of the city and academy. Of course, you're not submitting it to me. I'll be organizing it all and sending it to White Deer Academy. Only by allowing White Deer Academy to see Ocean of Clouds Academy's value would it give your academy a chance, right?" Instructor Zhu asked again. "You said that so long as anyone in my academy fulfills the required conditions, then they can return to White Deer Academy. Is that true?" "Of course," Kaiyang Jun guaranteed. "So long as there are those who fulfill the requirements, all of them may head to White Deer Academy. Besides that, Ocean of Clouds Academy can be considered to be under my White Deer Academy's protection. Regardless of whether it's the Python Clan, Steel Ape Clan, or Sky Divine Hall, none of them would dare to come here and cause trouble." Instructor Zhu stopped hesitating and nodded immediately. "I'll give the orders for all the inner cores, crystals, and other treasures to be sent to you." "Good." Kaiyang Jun grinned, and then he started walking towards the city. He walked for a while before he suddenly stopped moving and said, "Right, from this moment onward, I'll be temporarily holding the position of dean here. As for my junior brother Qin Yuan, he'll be holding the position of city governor for now." The three of them entered the city once Kaiyang Jun finished speaking. They'd only just entered the city when Qin Yuan gave Kaiyang Jun a thumbs up. "Kaiyang Jun, that was great. Really great. You didn't waste a shred of energy and took control of both the academy and city. Sometimes, it doesn't pay to rely solely on strength." Kaiyang Jun spoke flatly. "The best strategy is to subdue the enemy without a battle." Xingchen suddenly added, "Our academy didn't agree to let the students of Ocean of Clouds Academy enter it." "I know," Kaiyang Jun continued. "How could our academy allow these weaklings to join it?" Xingchen continued. "Then what about the promise you gave those saints?" Kaiyang Jun answered. "I lied to them, all right?" Qin Yuan roared with laughter. "You really are shameless. But I like it. Ha ha ha. Kai Young-jun spoke in a low voice. Besides dealing with Ocean of Clouds Academy, the Academy also sent us to temper our ability. This assignment is definitely an absolutely perfect opportunity for us, and we'll be able to obtain an unending supply of resources if we use it well. Xing Chan said, Actually, Ocean of Clouds Academy and City aren't very weak. Why don't we take control of them and make them an auxiliary force of ours? Them? Kai Young-jun shook his head. Our future is in the Central Divine Prefecture. It's a waste of our time to foster them. Ocean of Clouds Academy will have no further reason to exist once we've taken what we need. All right, let's not waste our breaths anymore. I can't wait to see the treasures of this academy and city. Ha ha ha. It didn't take long for them to vanish on the streets of the city. Right after they left, a scholarly man who carried a scroll and wore a black and white robe appeared in a corner of the city. He looked in the direction they'd vanished towards and shook his head slightly. How could someone capable of killing a saint while at the half-saint realm be weak? That's not a big deal, but he was even able to survive a battle with Oblivion Maiden. That's really not easy at all. Fine, I'll just wait a while longer. As soon as he finished speaking, the man suddenly vanished on the spot. 6 hours later, the new city governor of Ocean of Cloud City, Qin Yuan, suddenly gave his first order. From this moment onwards, any cultivator who lived in the city had to pay taxes, and the taxes were extremely high, because every cultivator had to submit at least 100 extreme-grade energy stones per month. 100 extreme-grade energy stones. That was definitely an astronomical figure for many cultivators in the city. Many of them started to look for Yang Yi and Yu Wushuang as they hoped that Yang Yi and Yu Wushuang would uphold justice for them. However, they realized that Yang Yi, Yu Wushuang, and the others were nowhere to be found. In the end, they finally found out after a thorough investigation that Yu Wushuang, Lu Wanner, and everyone else who was related to Yang Yi had been imprisoned. As for Yang Yi, no one knew where he was. Even if Yang Yi and the others weren't here to help them, they naturally wouldn't just allow themselves to be at the mercy of others. They resisted. The residents of the city naturally resisted. However, every single person who did that was killed, and their corpse was hung on the city walls. Even the joint forces of every single resident of the city could absolutely not rival the strength of 13 Saint Realm puppets. So they had no choice but to choose to leave the city. However, the area around the entire city was being guarded by saints. No one was allowed to leave unconditionally. They could leave if they wanted, but they couldn't take anything with them. So, the residents of the city started to seek help from Ocean of Clouds Academy. But they noticed to their astonishment that many students and elders of the academy had become Qin Yuan's subordinates. As for those who hadn't become Qin Yuan's subordinates, practically all of them were dead. Meanwhile, a man appeared outside the city. I'm finally here. Wanner's Dantian can finally be restored. It was Yang Yi, of course. He'd arrived early after traveling at his full speed, and he couldn't wait to see how happy Lu Wanner looked when her Dantian was restored. Right when he was about to enter the city, he suddenly frowned, because there were actually numerous corpses nailed on the city walls. Moreover, there were over 10,000 of them. Has something happened? Yang Ye's face fell. He was just about to charge in when he suddenly stopped. The sword servants left with Wushuang are still here. In other words, they should be fine, and they're just trapped or captured at most. If I were to charge in rashly and they use Wushuang and the others to threaten me, then I'll definitely be unable to do anything. I can't attack them directly for now. I have to figure out the situation first. When he thought up to this point, Yang Ye's figure transformed into a shadow that vanished on the spot. The city governor's estate. 10 million extreme-grade energy stones. Ha ha ha. In less than 6 hours, we've obtained so many energy stones. If this continues, we'll be absolutely rich in just 2 weeks or so. Qin Yuan roared madly with laughter in the hall within the city governor's estate. 10 million extreme-grade energy stones was a huge amount even for them. Xing Chun and Kai Young-jun were by Qin Yuan's side. Kai Young-jun revealed a slight smile when he heard Qin Yuan. Just look how you're acting. It's just 10 million extreme-grade energy stones. But to be honest, this academy and city are actually so wealthy. Not to mention anything else, they actually possessed over 1.5 million inner cores, and most of them were at the monarch realm or above. That truly surprised me. I heard that they fought Welkin Wolf Mountain Range, and Welkin Wolf Mountain Range was completely crushed. Those inner cores should have been obtained during that war. Xingchen grinned as well. No matter what, we don't have to rely on the academy to attain the Saint Realm anymore. Moreover, we won't have to work to obtain resources for a very long time. Qin Yuan grinned. In the beginning, those crazy fellows in our academy felt it was troublesome to come here, and all of them refused. In the end, the elders had no choice but to send us. I never expected that we would gain so much instead. I wonder if those fellows would cough up blood from their regret if they knew what we'd gained here. Kaiyang Jun suddenly restrained his smile and spoke seriously. We absolutely can't mention this to anyone once we return to the academy. Qin Yuan and Xing Chun restrained their smiles when they heard Kaiyang Jun, and they nodded. After all, wealth wasn't something that should be displayed. If those crazy fellows in the academy found out that they'd gained so much, they would definitely suffer horrifying consequences. Of course, those fellows couldn't do anything to them in the open. But what about secretly? They could act arrogantly here, but they had to keep a low profile once they returned. Meanwhile, Instructor Zhua and the other 3 saints of Ocean of Clouds Academy arrived at the hall. All of them had quite unsightly expressions on their faces. I need an explanation. Instructor Zhua gazed at them with a slightly livid expression, because they'd actually caused the entire city to be filled with voices of discontent. It could be said that the reputation which the academy had built up in the city had been completely destroyed in just a few hours. At this moment, there wasn't a single person in the city who wasn't cursing the academy. What were they cursing about? They were naturally saying the academy was ungrateful and turned on them once the academy had finished using them. An explanation? Kaiyang Jun chuckled. I don't know what you're saying. Your actions in the city. Instructors were stared fixedly at Kaiyang Jun. The residents of the city have gone through thick and thin with my academy, yet my academy is treating them like this now. That made Elder Zhua. Meanwhile, Qin Yuan suddenly interrupted Instructor Zhua and said, Elder Zhua, you must realize that you're not a member of Ocean of Clouds Academy anymore. You're a member of White Deer Academy now. So, I hope that you'll put the interests of White Deer Academy first, and not Ocean of Clouds Academy. Forcefully taking the wealth of the city's residents is for White Deer Academy? Instructor Zhua spoke in a low voice. As far as I'm concerned, it's for your own selfish desires. To be honest, it is. Meanwhile, Kaiyang Jun spoke. But are you trying to say that we can't? Elder Zhua, you should realize that we haven't acted against the students of Ocean of Clouds Academy. Conversely, the students who are helping us have even benefited from us. Why? Because they are on our side. Remember, we're on the same side. As for those people in the city, what do they have to do with us? Instructor Zhua fell silent for a short while before he said, They joined forces with our academy and fought to the death with us. And Kaiyang Jun chuckled. Once we return to White Deer Academy, we'll be people of 2 different worlds. Elder Zhua, you should be clearly aware that it's utterly impossible for them to head to the Central Divine Prefecture, let alone join White Deer Academy. In short, I hope that the 4 of you ignore everything that happens in the city. I don't want to become enemies with all of you. If we do become enemies, you should be clearly aware that you won't have the slightest chance unless all of you ignite your souls and detonate yourself. Are those fellows worth your lives? You can make a choice now. Choose to become our enemies or choose to become our friends. Meanwhile, Qin Yuan laughed coldly. If you're our friends, then anything can be discussed. But if you're our enemy, then we members of the law faction love it when we know who our enemies are because that makes the situation even easier to deal with. As soon as Qin Yuan finished speaking, 10 copper saints appeared here. Their expressions changed when they saw those copper saints. Instructor Zhua's face was quite unsightly because unless all 4 of them chose to ignite their souls and detonate themselves, they would have no chance to defeat 10 saints. Is it worth it to ignite our souls and detonate ourselves? Is it worth doing so for the sake of those people in the city? A long time passed before instructors would glance at Jun's group, and he said, I hope all of you keep your promise. As soon as he finished, he vanished along with the other saints. Qin Yuan spoke coldly. That old fellow is getting more and more annoying. Don't force him into a corner for now. Jun spoke indifferently. We have all the time in the world to deal with them. Presently, the important matter at hand is to gather the wealth within Ocean of Clouds Academy and City. Such an opportunity is very rare for us. After all, there might be a change in the situation if the forces of the scholarly faction arrive here. Xingchen frowned. Right? Those fellows from the scholarly faction should be here by now. Why is there no sign of them? Qin Yuan spoke coldly. Who knows? Those fellows have always been hesitant no matter what they do. In my opinion, our academy shouldn't have those fellows in it. Be careful of what you say. Jun suddenly shouted. Qin Yuan, that mouth of yours will be the death of you one day. Xingchen glanced at Qin Yuan and spoke flatly. I think you've forgotten about that fellow who's ranked at the first position in our academy. Qin Yuan's expression changed when he heard this, and there was deep fear in his eyes. Amongst the top 10 experts in the younger generation of White Deer Academy, the law faction occupied 9 of those positions, but the first position belonged to the scholarly faction. That fellow practically filled the law faction's younger generation with despair. A long moment of silence ensued before Jun broke the silence. Let's not talk about that anymore. Qin Yuan, just be careful in the future. Right? Is there any news about Xianxia's whereabouts? Xingchen shook her head and said, It's like he vanished. Qin Yuan laughed coldly. I think he fled or hid himself. Jun pondered deeply for a short while, and then he said, His reputation and prestige in the city and academy are rather great. We must capture him or kill him. Otherwise, while we have no reason to fear it, it'll still waste a huge amount of our time once he gathers the forces in the city and the academy. I think he might be hiding and preparing to strike a lethal blow against us. Meanwhile, Xingchen spoke in a low voice. I've investigated him. He isn't one to fear death, or I should say that he's a very loyal person. But his women are still in our hands. So, it's not very likely for him to have fled. He should be hiding in the shadows. Since he's a loyal person, then isn't it easy to deal with him? Meanwhile, Qin Yuan chuckled slyly. I refuse to believe that he won't show himself if we act against his women. Jun nodded. True. Xingchen frowned. But what if he doesn't show himself? In any case, we won't lose anything. Qin Yuan smiled. Of course, if he still doesn't show himself when his women are humiliated, then I can only convey my admiration to him. Actually, those women of his are really not bad. Of course, they're leagues away from you, Xingchen. But having some fun with them wouldn't be bad at all. Ha ha ha. Jun glanced at Qin Yuan and said, Do as you wish. Qin Yuan roared with laughter as he stood up and walked towards the door. He suddenly stopped and turned around to look at Jun when he arrived at the door, and then he chuckled slyly. Are you interested in coming along? In any case, Yang Yi has quite a few women. Jun glanced at Xingchen, and then he spoke seriously. I'm not. Go have fun yourself. Qin Yuan roared with laughter, and then he turned around and strode forward. However, there was someone in his way. Qin Yuan's expression changed. Who are you? The person cracked a smile and said, I'm Yang Yi. As soon as he spoke, Yang Yi swung his fist forward. The sword on Qin Yuan's waist suddenly charged out of its sheath at the exact same instant that Yang Yi's fist shot forward, and it slashed down swiftly. The fist and sword collided. Bang! The sword shattered while Qin Yuan was blasted flying. Moreover, the powerful aftershock of the collision transformed the entire city governor's estate into powder. Everyone within the city immediately shot their gazes towards the city governor's estate, and the entire city seethed with excitement when they realized it was Yang Yi. It's Yang Yi. It's Dean Yang. He hasn't abandoned us. He's back. He's back. Ha ha ha. I knew it was impossible for Yang Yi to associate himself with villains like those fellows from Ocean of Clouds Academy. He definitely hadn't shown himself until now because he was getting help. Ha ha ha. Now that Yang Yi is here, let's see how those fellows continue acting arrogantly. Don't forget that they have 13 saints on their side. And there are 17 if the elders of Ocean of Clouds Academy are included. But Yang Yi is all alone. The crowd fell silent when they heard this. Meanwhile, Qin Yuan, who'd been blasted back by Yang Yi just moments ago, gazed at his sword, which only had its hilt left in his grasp, and he was stunned. I was actually blasted flying by a single punch of his? A moment later, a ferocious expression surged into Qin Yuan's eyes, and he roared furiously and intended to charge forward. However, he was stopped by Kaiyang Jun. "Let me kill him!" Qin Yuan gazed at Kaiyang Jun with a ferocious expression on his face. "Calm down." Kaiyang Jun chuckled, and then he gazed at Yang Yi and said, "As expected of the previous Dean of Ocean of Clouds Academy, you have some ability, and you're quite brave indeed. You still dared to come to us on your own under such circumstances. However, I'm really quite curious. Based on the information we collected about you, you don't seem like a fool. Since you're not a fool, then why have you come?" Yang Yi glanced at them and remained silent. He turned to look towards the side instead. Suddenly, a few black rays of light shot through the sky, and it didn't take long for Yu Wushuang, Lu Wan'er, Shang Qingying, and the others to arrive before him while escorted by two shadowy figures. Yang Yi was naturally not a fool. He'd found out where Yu Wushuang and the others were being kept before he'd come here. So, he'd sent two shadowy figures to save them while he rushed to the city governor's estate. His objective was naturally to keep them here and avoid any unexpected changes in the situation. Yang Yi heaved a sigh of relief in his heart when he saw that they were fine. Even though he'd guessed they were fine because of the sword servants he'd given them, he was still worried in the end. After all, both of them had almost died for him, and he really didn't want any mishaps to occur to them. Fortunately, they were well. Yang Yi grinned at them when he noticed that they intended to say something. "It's great that both of you are fine. Allow me to deal with this first." "Be careful," Yu Wushuang spoke softly. As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her right hand and a Saint Realm sword servant appeared before Yang Yi. That sword servant, Zhu Yuan, was her last trump card to keep all of them safe, and she hadn't used it before this because it was completely meaningless. After all, they had 13 Saint Realm puppets and the support of instructor Zhu's group of 4. Under such circumstances, a single saint was completely useless. So, she hadn't summoned it. Deal with this? Haha. Alright, then let's deal with it. Kaiyang Jun waved his right hand and 13 copper figures at the Saint Realm appeared by his sides. "Yang Yi, tell me how you intend to deal with this? I'm really very curious." A slight smile arose on the corners of Yang Ye's mouth, and he was just about to say something. However, Instructor Zhua, the other elders of the academy, and many other students of the academy arrived here. "Yang Yi, don't be rash." Instructor Zhua spoke in a low voice. "They aren't here to go against our academy. They've come to make peace with our academy. Moreover, the students of our academy have a chance to join White Deer Academy from now on. Especially you. Based on your natural talent and potential, it'll be absolutely easy for you to join White Deer Academy." "Join White Deer Academy?" Yang Yi shook his head and chuckled. Instructor Zhua, Dean Shang's lifelong goal was to return to White Deer Academy. However, he hoped we returned with our dignity, and not receive handouts from others like this. "Instructor Zhua, let me be honest. Based on the strength that the 4 of you possess, White Deer Academy would definitely not refuse all of you. But just ask yourselves if you'll be respected once you're at White Deer Academy? Would you? You wouldn't. They'll just look down on all of you because you didn't rely on your own ability to return to White Deer Academy, and you were only able to return there because they felt pity for you and allowed it. Understand?" When he spoke up to this point, there was a rather ferocious expression on Yang Ye's face, and he was practically howling. "We can lose anything throughout our lives, but we can't lose our dignity. If a person doesn't even have his dignity, then would he still be respected? Do you expect them to respect a person like that? I don't know if White Deer Academy will respect all of you, but in any case, I look down upon all of you. Instructor Zhua and the others revealed extremely unsightly expressions. How audacious! Yang Yi, how dare you speak to the elders like that? Meanwhile, one of the students roared furiously, Yang Yi, you're not the dean anymore. Our dean is Kaiyang Jun. If you're sensible, then quickly kneel down and surrender. Kaiyang Jun is benevolent and might allow you to live. Otherwise, you'll die a graveless death. Yang Yi gazed at that student and said, Why don't you say that one more time? That student's expression changed. He gazed at Kaiyang Jun and saw a faint smile on Kaiyang Jun's face, and it allowed him to feel a sense of relief. After that, he glanced at the 13 Saint Realm puppets at the side, and it greatly reduced the fear he felt for Yang Yi. But he still did fear Yang Yi. Meanwhile, Kaiyang Jun suddenly gazed at that student and smiled. What's your name? That man was slightly stunned when he heard Kaiyang Jun, and then he was overjoyed. He knew that he had to depend on Kaiyang Jun's group to head to the Central Divine Prefecture and join White Deer Academy in the future. Now that Kaiyang Jun had noticed him, it proved that he hadn't tried to curry favor with Kaiyang Jun's group for nothing. He stated right away, My name's Du Ming. Kaiyang Jun grinned and said, Not bad. I'll remember you. Right, he asked you to say it again. So do it. What are you afraid of? Du Ming was instantly filled with confidence when he heard this, and then he gazed at Yang Yi and laughed coldly. Yang Yi, open your eyes and look carefully. We have 13 saints, and it's 17 if Instructor Zhua and the others are included. Not to mention that you're all alone here. It would change nothing even if you brought all the experts of the ancient sword school with you. If I were you... Suddenly, Du Ming's voice stopped. All of the people here looked over and were stunned. Because Du Ming, who was standing by Kaiyang Jun's side, had suddenly appeared before Yang Yi. And Yang Yi was holding him by the throat. Kaiyang Jun and the others' expressions changed, and they simultaneously revealed solemn expressions. They'd gone on high alert at practically the exact same moment. At the same time, the 13 copper figures stood in front of them. Yang Yi's speed was too swift. It was swift to the point that it horrified them. Xing Chun spoke solemnly, The laws of speed. His cape is at the divine rank as well. Kaiyang Jun clenched his fists. The carefree expression on his face had vanished, and there was only undisguised killing intent left on his face. At this moment, Du Ming's eyes were opened wide, and there was horror in his eyes. Yang Yi chuckled, and then he used his left hand to point at Kaiyang Jun. Your confidence came from him? But did you see that? If I want to kill you, then all he can do is watch. Yang Yi. Even though he offended you verbally, he doesn't deserve death. Meanwhile, Instructor Zhua spoke in a low voice. Moreover, you're not the dean of my academy anymore. So all of this is internal affairs of my Ocean of Clouds Academy and City. There's no need for you to interfere. Just return to the ancient sword school. Crack. The sound of bones breaking resounded. A gloomy expression instantly covered Instructor Zhua and the other elders' faces when they saw Du Ming's neck being snapped. Kaiyang Jun's eyes narrowed as well. But he still didn't do anything because he was happy to watch them kill each other. Instructor Zhua spoke in a low voice. Yang Yi, do you realize what you're doing? Yang Yi chuckled. This is how I do things. If others respect me, then I respect them. If they don't rest me, then I'm sorry. Yang Yi, don't give a fuck who that person is. Instructor Zhua, I didn't want to be the dean, but you forced me to take that position. Fine, I did it for the sake of Dean Shang. Yet now, you don't want me to be the dean again? Let me fucking ask you something. Do I look like someone you can toy around with as you please? I should be the dean when you want me to, and not be the dean when you don't want me to. A fierce expression gradually crept onto Yang Ye's face as he spoke up to this point. Instructor Zhua, since you don't respect me, then I naturally have no need to respect you. Now, I'll tell you this in front of everyone. Unless Dean Shang comes back to life and removes me from my position as dean, then I'm the dean. Instructor Zhua's eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a trace of killing intent in them. Yang Yi, you have no right to make decisions for Ocean of Clouds Academy. Is that so? Yang Yi chuckled. And then he glanced at the students of the academy before he said, "Those who still recognize me as the dean, stand over here. Remember that you only have one chance." His voice grew heavier as he repeated, "Remember that you only have one chance." A wisp of ridicule curled up onto the corners of Instructor Zhu's mouth. Even though Yang Yi had quite the reputation in the academy, could he compare to them? It was impossible. Sure enough, besides Feng Wuchao and the others who'd experienced life and death with Yang Yi, the others didn't move. How laughable. "Yang Yi, do you see that now? Ocean of Clouds Academy doesn't need a dean like you." Qin Yuan ridiculed. "Are you still going to continue humiliating yourself?" Yang Yi gazed at Instructor Zhu and the others for a long time, and then he looked at Kaiyang Jun's group. "I'm done with the academy. Now, let's deal with the business between us. Are you going to spit out what you've plundered from the academy and city during this period? Or should I make you?" "You?" Qin Yuan laughed coldly and was about to attack. However, Kaiyang Jun stopped him. Kaiyang Jun chuckled as he gazed at Instructor Zhu. "Elder Zhu, you said that you would deal with Yang Yi, right? I don't want to see those students who betrayed Ocean of Clouds Academy as well." Instructor Zhu fell silent, and a short while passed before he gazed at Feng Wuchao and the others who stood behind Yang Yi. "I'll give all of you one last chance. I'll forgive your mistakes if you come over here right now." Feng Wuchao and the others exchanged glances, and then they shook their heads. Instructor Zhu's eyes narrowed slightly, and then a cold glow flashed within them. "Kill them!" As soon as they heard this, the students behind Instructor Zhu charged at Yang Ye's group. As for Instructor Zhu and the other three saints, their gazes had descended onto Yang Yi, and their auras had locked onto him. Yang Ye's gaze turned icy cold when he saw them charge at him, and there wasn't a shred of emotion left within his eyes. A ray of light flashed, and then the heads of a few students who led the group instantly shot into the air. Instructor Zhu and the others' eyes narrowed slightly when they saw Yang Yi attack, and then a moment of silence ensued before Instructor Zhu spoke fiercely, "Kill him!" As soon as he spoke, one of the saints by his side roared furiously and swiftly slapped his palm in Yang Ye's direction from afar. Meanwhile, a shadowy figure suddenly appeared before Yang Yi, and then a ripple flashed forward. "Ah!" A shrill cry resounded. The others here looked towards its source and saw the entire arm of that saint was gone. They were astounded by the sight of it, and then their gazes descended onto the shadowy figure which seemed like a soul as it stood in front of Yang Yi. A Saint Realm puppet. If Zhu Yuan and the two other shadowy figures standing by Yu Wushuang and the others were included, then Yang Yi actually had 4 Saint Realm puppets. Even though it was much inferior in number when compared to the 13 that Kaiyang Jun's group possessed, Kaiyang Jun and the others still had extremely solemn expressions on their faces, because the attack executed by the shadowy figure was simply too mysterious, and that puppet was too formidable as well. Even though that saint from Ocean of Clouds Academy couldn't compare to the saints of White Deer Academy, he was still a saint. However, even if they were both saints, the saint from Ocean of Clouds Academy had instantly lost his entire arm. Moreover, he would have been killed on the spot if he hadn't dodged at the last moment. Is the gap between them that huge? Fortunately, Yang Yi only has 3 of those puppets. Kaiyang Jun and the others visibly relaxed a little when they thought up to this point. "Yang Yi, no wonder you dared to return to Ocean of Cloud City on your own. So you obtained such powerful and mysterious Saint Realm puppets." Kaiyang Jun spoke coldly. "But do you think that just 4 puppets are enough to go against us? Open your eyes and look. We have 17 saints. Yang Yi, don't say that I didn't give you a chance. So long as you give up all resistance, come to me and kowtow 10 times. Then I can consider sparing you and the others behind you." Yang Yi chuckled and said, "Since you're willing to give me a chance, then I'll give you one as well. Hand over everything you're taken from the academy and city, and then kneel for 3 days and 3 nights at the entrance to the city. I'll consider sparing your lives if you do that. You're courting death." Qin Yuan roared furiously, and then he pressed his fingers together and pointed them at Yang Yi. A ray of ghastly white sword energy shot out from the tip of his finger and instantly arrived before Yang Yi. However, Yang Yi didn't dodge and just allowed it to strike him. After that, Everyone watched with astonishment as it just entered Yang Ye's body. Quasi-void rank sword intent? Yang Yi shook his head slightly. Aren't you ashamed of displaying such weak sword intent? Yang Ye's sword intent was at the void rank, and it could be said that unless he encountered a sword cultivator who possessed void rank sword intent as well, all sword energy and sword intent would be useless before him, because his void rank sword intent could absorb it all. You! Qin Yuan seemed to have thought of something, and he gazed at Yang Yi with astonishment while shock and disbelief filled his eyes. As for Kaiyang Jun and Xing Chun who stood by his side, their eyes were filled with shock as well. After all, with their discerning ability and the knowledge they possessed, they naturally knew why Qin Yuan's sword energy was useless before Yang Yi. There was only a single explanation, and it was because Yang Yi possessed void rank sword intent. Void rank sword intent. Not to mention Pine Prefecture, it was quite rare even in the Central Divine Prefecture. At this moment, Kaiyang Jun had lost his interest to toy with his prey, and he waved his right hand, "Kill!" As soon as he gave the order, the 13 copper figures transformed into rays of golden light that shot in Yang Ye's direction. Trying to bully me with numbers? Yang Yi laughed coldly, and then the other 7 shadowy figures who were hiding in his shadow flashed out and stood in front of him. After that, over a dozen ripples flashed forward. Bang! 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 A few dozen explosions resounded, and then everyone watched as those copper figures were forced to a stop. The golden light dispersed to reveal the copper figures, and every single one of their chests had a crack that stretched for around 10 centimeters. 10 of them, Kaiyang Jun, Qin Yuan, and Xing Chen's pupils constricted. Obviously, they hadn't expected Yang Yi to actually possess 10 of such formidable Saint Realm puppets. 10 Saint Realm puppets. How the heck did Yang Yi get them? After all, they only had those 13 copper figures because White Deer Academy had given those puppets to them. Not to mention 13 copper puppets. Even 30 were nothing for White Deer Academy. But what about Yang Yi? Who gave them to him? Not to mention Kaiyang Jun's group. Even Instructor Zhua and the other members of Ocean of Clouds Academy were extremely shocked. They'd known Yang Yi for a long time and knew that he possessed the skill to refine puppets. However, that was 10 Saint Realm puppets, and it made them wonder if those 10 saints had just not resisted and allowed him to refine them. What a waste! Yang Yi cried out in his heart as he gazed at that. He felt it was a waste that he'd wasted 10 of those shadowy figures in that world. After all, there had been 20 of them in the beginning, but his carelessness had caused 10 of them to be wasted. If he hadn't wasted them in that world, then he could just lead those 20 puppets to attack Sky Divine Hall. Yang Yi shook his head and restrained his thoughts. After that, he waved his right hand, and the 10 shadowy figures shot towards the 13 copper puppets. It didn't take long for them to flash into a pocket of space. Regardless of whether it was Yang Yi or Kaiyang Jun, they didn't dare to let their puppets fight in the world down below, because they would be finished if it caused divine wrath to descend upon them. Yang Yi flipped his palm and the Herculean sword appeared in his grasp. He started walking towards Kaiyang Jun's group as he spoke. "Come, let me see how strong the members of a diamond rank power are. Right. In order to avoid wasting time, it's best if all 3 of you fight me together. You want us to join forces against you?" Kaiyang Jun started laughing from the rage he felt. "Yang Yi, aren't you thinking a little too highly of yourself? Perhaps there are those in the Central Divine Prefecture who can fight all 3 of us at once. But can anyone beneath the Saint Realm through Pine Prefecture do that? Since you're so confident, then we'll fight one by one. Which one of you is going first?" asked Yang Yi. He didn't want to waste time, but just as he'd said, he wanted to witness the strength of the students from White Deer Academy. "I'll do it." Xing Chun took a step forward while she stretched her hand forward. In an instant, the clouds in the sky swiftly converged together, and it only took an instant for them to transform into a huge white-colored cloud dragon. The cloud dragon had a ferocious appearance, and it roared with fury as it transformed into a ray of white light that slammed down towards Yang Yi. The cloud dragon dived down from high above, and the space in its part warped and seemed as if it would be minced into bits at any moment. It was absolutely astounding. It was a divine rank technique at the very least. Yu Wushuang and the others were visibly worried when they saw Xingchen execute a divine rank technique with such ease. Yang Yi nodded slightly when he saw it, because just that technique alone told him that her strength wasn't bad. If it was before his trip to the Zither of Love, then he would probably have to exert some effort to defeat her. But now, the spectators watched as Yang Yi took a step forward, and then he just tapped the Herculean sword forward, even though the sword still hadn't even come into contact with the cloud dragon. The powerful force it carried immediately obliterated the imposing aura emanated by the cloud dragon. Moreover, the cloud dragon was forced to a stop in midair by the energy contained within the Herculean sword. Break apart! Yang Yi suddenly twisted his wrist, and the cloud dragon exploded apart in midair. Xingchen's pupils constricted violently when she witnessed this scene, and astonishment filled her eyes. After all, it was a low-grade divine rank technique, but it had been destroyed just like that. She gazed at Yang Yi again. This time, there wasn't even a shred of contempt in her eyes, and only an extremely solemn expression remained. Even though Yang Yi had merely executed a single attack, she knew that his strength wasn't weaker to hers at all. Moreover, she was very well aware that they'd severely underestimated Yang Yi from the very beginning. Actually, it wasn't their fault because Yang Yi had grown stronger. Instructor Zhua and the others were beyond shocked as well. They naturally had a good understanding of Yang Yi's strength, and they knew that he could kill saints. However, the strength Yang Yi revealed right now was clearly much stronger. After all, Yang Yi hadn't utilized his void rank sword intent or any powerful technique earlier. Yang Yi had just used his physical strength. When did Yang Yi become so strong? The woman fell silent for an instant before she raised both her hands, and it was clear that she intended to attack again. However, a shadow suddenly flashed before her, and then the blade of a sword was pressed against her neck. Yang Yi's hand was on the other end of the sword. Yang Yi said, "I think there's no need for you to attack again." Yang Yi was about to swing his sword while he spoke, but Instructor Zhua suddenly roared furiously, "Yang Yi, do you know what you're doing? She's a student of White Deer Academy. They didn't come here on their own. They're here on behalf of White Deer Academy. You'll definitely bring eternal damnation to the academy and city if you do anything to her." Meanwhile, Kai Yongjun spoke ferociously, "Yang Yi, I guarantee that everyone related to you will be annihilated if you dare to touch her." Yang Yi glanced at Instructor Zhua, and then he gazed at Kai Yongjun and laughed with ridicule. "Who do you think you are?" Yang Yi flicked his wrist once he finished speaking. Hiss! A gorgeous head shot into the air while accompanied by a pillar of blood. "No!" Kai Yongjun howled furiously like a raging beast. "No? This is only just the beginning." Yang Yi laughed coldly, and then he shot towards Kai Yongjun. "Stop him!" Instructors were roared, and then he and the other two unharmed saints flashed towards Yang Yi like bolts of lightning. As far as they were concerned, Yang Yi was definitely bringing calamity to the academy by killing Kai Yongjun and his companions. Yang Yi didn't care about that, but they had to. If they let Yang Yi kill Kai Yongjun and the others, then it would be obvious that their plans to return to White Deer Academy would be just a dream. So, Kai Yongjun and his companions could absolutely not be allowed to die. Suddenly, a ray of green light and red light flew down from the sky, and it only took an instant for them to descend before Yang Yi and obstruct Instructor Zhua's group. The light vanished to reveal Qing and Hong's figures. Instructor Zhua and the other two saints stopped immediately when they saw Qing and Hong, and then Instructor Zhua spoke with a gloomy expression on his face. "These are internal affairs of my Ocean of Clouds Academy. I hope that you don't interfere." Qing paid no attention to Instructor Zhua and just gazed at Yang Yi. Yang Yi glanced at them, and then his gaze descended onto Hong. At this moment, Hong was a saint, but her aura was clearly comparatively weaker than Instructor Zhua and the others who were seniors in the saint realm. "What are you looking at? Don't make me dig your eyes out." Hong immediately glared at Yang Yi and spoke fiercely when she noticed Yang Yi's gaze on her. Yang Yi disregarded her and gazed at Qing. "Don't let them interfere." Qing nodded lightly, and then she returned to her original form. A huge green python appeared here, and then her extremely long tail swept towards Instructor Zhua and the others. Instructor Zhua and the others' faces turned grim, and they weren't able to dodge and could only block it by force. In the end, Instructor Zhua and the others didn't dare to violate the unspoken rule of the Radiant Dimension, and they entered into a pocket of space with Qing and fought Qing there. Yang Ye's gaze descended onto Hong. "Go help your younger sister. I don't need you to tell me that." Hong grunted coldly, and then she transformed into a ray of red light that shot into the sky and vanished in an instant. Yang Yi. Meanwhile, Kaiyang Jun, who was holding Xing Chen's corpse in his arms, suddenly stood up. His eyes were completely bloodshot while a ferocious expression covered his face, and the killing intent he emanated was simply visible. Yang Yi raised the Herculean sword slightly and pointed it at Kaiyang Jun and Qin Yuan. "Come at me together?" He wasn't being arrogant when he said this. Not to mention his current strength, even his past strength was something that was impossible for them to best. If his past strength was compared to his current strength, then the only difference would be that it was much easier to deal with them now, very much easier. Xing Chen's older brother is the 15th ranked expert in White Deer Academy. "Do you know what the rankings of my White Deer Academy is like?" Kaiyang Jun spoke in a fierce tone. "You don't. Yang Yi, you'll pay a horrible price you can't bear to pay for what you've done. Trust me, you'll die a miserable death." "The 15th. Yang Yi chuckled. "He sounds quite formidable. All right, I really have no mood to waste my breath on both of you. Since you refuse to attack, then allow me." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi swiftly stomped his right foot against the ground, and an explosion resounded as the ground beneath his feet collapsed. Meanwhile, he relied on the counterforce to instantly appear before Kaiyang Jun and Qin Yuan, and then the Herculean sword smashed down towards them. Kaiyang Jun and Qin Yuan's expressions changed, and they could only raise their palms and slap them forward in the short amount of time they had to react. Two huge palms which carried terrifying might slapped Yang Ye's Herculean sword. Bang! A huge explosion resounded. Crack! The two huge palms shook violently before Yang Ye's sword, and then countless cracks covered them. Kaiyang Jun and Qin Yuan were shocked by this scene, as they'd never imagined that Yang Yi was actually capable of going head-on against their joint forces on his own. Moreover, Yang Yi was still using just his physical strength. How strong is his body? "Break apart!" Yang Yi roared furiously as he twisted his wrist. Bang! A huge explosion resounded as the palms instantly exploded into pieces, and then waves of energy swept out towards the surroundings. Kaiyang Jun and Qin Yuan were instantly blasted almost 3 kilometers away, whereas Yang Yi remained motionless on the spot. Because his void rank sword intent had instantly minded the wave of energy into bits when it came close to him. Lightning tap. Meanwhile, Kaiyang Jun's howl of rage resounded through the area. The clouds in the sky were suddenly torn open as a huge finger that carried destructive arcs of lightning emerged from behind the clouds, and it descended towards Yang Yi. Everywhere it passed, a long arc of lightning was left in its wake, and it tore apart and blasted apart the space around it. It was a mid-grade divine rank technique at least. The countless cultivators of Ocean of Cloud City were shocked by this scene, and they started dashing backwards and only stopped after they were around 10 kilometers away. However, the powerful energy contained within the finger still caused their souls to shudder. Yu Wushuang and the others had moved aside as well, because they would only be a burden to Yang Yi if they were to stay close to him now. Moreover, their eyes were filled with worry. Yang Ye's eyes had a slight shred of seriousness in them as well. Needless to say, Kaiyang Jun had some skill. After all, a mid-grade divine rank technique couldn't be cultivated successfully just because one had the technique in their possession. It was just like his divine fist of destruction or death by a thought. They had very harsh requirements. Ha ha ha! Yang Yi, that's a mid-grade divine rank technique. It's the technique Kaiyang Jun is known for. Let me see how you'll stop it. Qin Yuan roared madly. He was a sword cultivator and Yang Yi possessed void rank sword intent, so he was completely powerless before Yang Yi. That made him feel aggrieved to the absolute limit. Yang Yi disregarded Qin Yuan and flipped his palm. The Herculean sword was instantly exchanged for yellow springs. Void rank sword intent surged out from within him while yellow springs resided in his grasp. And then he transformed into a ray of light that tore through space and shot into the sky. The ray of light slammed against the huge finger in midair. A moment of silence ensued. Bang! It was like a thunderclap resounded through the world, and the sky shook violently. The spectators watched as the huge finger instantly exploded into pieces, and then countless waves of energy shot through the sky and even caused the space in the surroundings to warp before them. Kaiyang Jun and Qin Yuan were astounded when they witnessed this scene. It was especially so for Kaiyang Jun. His mind had gone blank when he witnessed the might of Yang Ye's attack. Even a mid-grade divine rank technique is useless against him. After all, even saints would dare not go head-on against that technique of his in the past. However, Yang Yi, who was merely a mid-rank half-saint, had destroyed it in a head-on collision. Is he really from the Pine Prefecture and not from the Central Divine Prefecture? Suddenly, a sword howl resounded in the sky, and then a ray of sword energy shot down like a bolt of lightning towards Kaiyang Jun and Qin Yuan. Kaiyang Jun and Qin Yuan were horrified. They'd personally witnessed the might of Yang Ye's attacks, so how could they possibly resist it? They wanted to flee, but they were shocked to notice that a strand of terrifying intent had pressed down upon them like a mountain, causing them to be unable to even move an inch. So, they had no choice but to join forces and face Yang Ye's attack. They immediately slapped their palms towards Yang Ye's attack, and two huge palms flashed forward once more and slammed against Yang Ye's attack. Bang! The sword energy instantly blasted those huge palms into pieces and struck them. Pooh! Pooh! Both of them spat out a mouthful of blood while their figures were blasted flying. Amazing! At this moment, the blood of countless cultivators throughout the city. During the short period that Kaiyang Jun's group had taken control of the city and academy, it had been like a nightmare for them. If they were to be honest, they didn't want to leave the city, or it should be said that many of them treated the city like their home. But as soon as Kaiyang Jun's group arrived here, they'd started to plunder the residents of the city. Moreover, those who refused were even slaughtered by Kaiyang Jun's group. So, the residents of the city didn't dare to voice out the rage they felt. Now, when they watched as Kaiyang Jun and the others were either killed or defeated, the rage that had been repressed within them had finally exploded forth. Cough! Cough! Kaiyang Jun and Qin Yuan crawled up slowly from the ground. Meanwhile, Yang Yi appeared in front of them, and then void rank sword intent pressed down upon them and pressed them back down to the ground. Qin Yuan raised his head and gazed resentfully at Yang Yi. Yang Yi, if you dare to kill us, then White Deer Academy will definitely slaughter Ocean of Clouds Academy and Ocean of Clouds City. Hiss! Qin Yuan had just finished speaking when a ray of light flashed, and then his head rolled down to the ground while a fountain of blood sprouted from his neck. Kaiyang Jun instantly turned ghastly pale. Yang Yi pressed yellow springs against the center of Kaiyang Jun's forehead. I'm really interested in those 13 puppets of yours. How do I control them? You want to control them? Haha. Yang Yi, you're dreaming. Kaiyang Jun laughed like a madman. Yang Yi, kill me if you want. Why waste your breath? No one in my academy is afraid of death. As you wish. A ray of light flashed, and then Kaiyang Jun's head rolled down to the ground and stopped just beside Qin Yuan's head. After he killed them, Yang Yi waved his right hand and their spatial rings instantly flew into his palm. He glanced at their contents and flicked them over to Yu Wushuang. Everything they took is in these. I'll leave it to you. Yu Wushuang glanced at Yang Yi and nodded. Yang Yi raised his head and looked up into the sky, and then he issued a command in his heart. The 10 shadowy figures immediately appeared before him. At the same time, the 13 copper figures appeared near Kaiyang Jun's corpse. At this moment, all 13 copper puppets were terribly damaged and were on the verge of breaking apart, but they could still fight. Yang Yi was about to study those copper puppets when Qing and Hong appeared before him, and their faces were slightly pale while blood could be seen on the corner of their mouths. Qing said, "We can't hold them back any longer." Yang Yi turned around and saw Instructor Zhu's group descending from the sky. Their expressions changed drastically when they noticed Kai Yongjun and Qin Yuan's corpses. Instructor Zhuo pointed a finger at Yang Yi and roared furiously, "Yang Yi, do you realize what you've done? You'll bring calamity to our academy." Yang Yi glanced at them, and then he glanced at the students who were standing in the distance. He pondered deeply for a short moment, and then he said, "Leave no one alive! Leave no one alive! Leave no one alive?" All of them were stunned. What does he mean? He intends to kill all the students and elders of the academy? My God, is he joking? Countless cultivators gazed at Yang Yi with disbelief. Obviously, they hadn't expected that Yang Yi would arouse killing intent towards Instructor Zhuo and the others. At this moment, even Instructor Zhuo and the others were stunned. Yang Yi wants to kill us? He actually wants to kill us? Their hearts shook when they noticed the ghastly expression Yang Yi had on his face, and they knew that he wasn't joking or trying to scare them. Yang Yi really did want to kill them. Their expressions turned unsightly to the extreme when they thought up to this point. It was comparatively better for Instructor Zhuo and the other saints, and they were slightly more composed. However, the students behind them were in quite an embarrassing state. All of them were pale and some had even slumped down to the ground. The reason they hadn't gone over to Yang Ye's side was because they felt that Yang Yi had only a few experts on his side, while they had 17 saints on their side. Moreover, they dreamed of joining White Deer Academy. As for the way they joined White Deer Academy, they didn't care about that at all. In their opinion, it was fine so long as they could. So, they naturally refused to choose Yang Ye's side. But they'd never imagined that Yang Yi would have actually turned the situation around. Would Yang Yi spare them? The answer was no, because they knew Yang Ye's character very well. He'd said that it was their last chance just now, so it was their last chance, and they discarded it. No one begged for mercy because they knew it was pointless. As soon as Yang Yi gave the order, the shadowy figures around him immediately floated towards Instructor Zhuo and the others. Instructor Zhuo and the others' expressions changed, and Instructor Zhuo shouted furiously, "Yang Yi, are you really going to go to such extents?" However, Yang Yi paid no attention to him and just turned around before walking towards the copper puppets. Meanwhile, Yu Wushuang suddenly ran over to him and shook her head. Yang Yi stopped. At the same time, the 10 shadowy figures stopped as well. However, they didn't move aside and surrounded Instructor Zhuo's group instead. If we lost earlier, then they would have shown no mercy to us. Yang Yi gazed at Yu Wushuang. Just as he'd said, he was very well aware that all of them would die if they'd lost. That was the reason why he'd decisively ordered their annihilation. It wasn't that he refused to spare out of consideration for the relationship they had in the past. It was because it would be stupid to do that when they were enemies now. After all, they'd wanted to kill him, so wasn't it stupid to care about such things? Yu Wushuang replied, "I know." Yang Yi asked, "Then why are you asking me to spare them?" She pondered deeply for a short while and said, "I know that if I were to reason with you, like say that it'll be extremely disadvantageous to us if they are killed, you'll definitely refuse to listen to reason, and I don't want to say anything like that. All I wish to say is that it's mostly because of Instructor Zhuo and the other elders that Wanner and I were able to stay safe." When she spoke up to this point, she raised her head and looked him in the eyes. "They just wanted to join White Deer Academy, and I believe they never wanted to harm us. It's just our choices that were different. Even though we became enemies because of the different choices we made, you must remember that we once fought side by side. They played a part in allowing Ocean of Clouds Academy and city's survival until now." Yang Yi remained silent. Yu Wushuang continued, "We can't manage the academy and city by killing those who go against us. Even though it'll instill fear in them and deter them from doing anything, it'll cause us to lose the support of the people here. Because they would feel that you're cruel, and they would feel that going against your will would bring death upon them. Just think about it, would anyone be willing to stay by your side under such circumstances? If you don't believe me, then look around you. Do they show fear or respect to you?" Meanwhile, Shang Qingying walked over to Yang Yi and said, "Even though I'm very angry about the decision they made, it's just as Wushuang said. It's just our choices that were differing. Yang Yi, I know that you're one who loves to put an end to future troubles, but I hope you can show mercy this time. Don't do it for anything else but because Instructor Zhua and the others protected you, Wushuang and the others, and do it for my grandfather, alright? Trust me, if my grandfather was given this choice, then he would definitely choose to disband the academy than kill them. Yang Yi remained silent for a long time before he turned around to gaze at Instructor Zhua and the others. At the moment all of you chose to obey that fellow's orders and attack me, all of you were dead to me. However, I won't kill all of you this time. It isn't that I dare not do so, nor do I care what others think. It's only because Wushuang and Wanner are fine, and all of you played a part in keeping them safe. That's why I'm not killing all of you now. But I don't want to see all of you again. If I see any one of you in Ocean of Cloud City tomorrow, then I'll kill every single one of you who's still here. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi turned around and walked towards the 13 copper puppets. Shang Qingying wanted to say something, but Yu Wushuang stopped her. Yu Wushuang glanced at Yang Yi and said, Miss Shang, you have to realize that he doesn't need to be the dean of the academy, and once he refuses to be the dean, then everything he has said in the past would be meaningless. Making Instructor Zhua and the others leave is the best outcome we can hope for. Meanwhile, Lu Wanner stated, otherwise, the academy and city will split apart if they are allowed to stay. Besides that, even if we forgive them, what about the residents of the city? Countless residents of the city know what they've done, and their presence here will only cause even more trouble in the future. Wanner is absolutely right. Yu Wushuang continued, it really isn't suitable for them to stay. Leaving the city isn't a bad thing for them. Otherwise, Yang Ye's killing intent might be aroused at any moment. Shang Qingying sighed softly, but if we do that, then the academy's strength would be greatly impaired. After all, Instructor Zhua and the others practically represented all the elites of the academy, and it would definitely be a huge loss to the academy if they were forced to leave. Yu Wushuang gazed at Yang Yi and said, so long as he's here, then we can disregard all of that. As soon as she finished speaking, Yu Wushuang turned around and walked over to Instructor Zhua's group that were surrounded by the shadowy figures, and she glanced at them before she said, farewell everyone. Young Miss Wushuang, is there really no way for us to redeem ourselves? Meanwhile, one of the students spoke in a trembling tone. The academy was where their roots were, so where else could they go if they left the academy? Yu Wushuang gazed at Instructor Zhua and said, Instructor Zhua, do you really think that all of you would be able to return to White Deer Academy with just a few words from Kaiyang Jun's group? No, I don't think so. If White Deer Academy wanted to let all of you return, then it wouldn't have just sent 3 weaklings like them. It isn't a matter of whether they think highly about our academy. It's just the way that extraordinarily powerful sects and powers do things. Meanwhile, Lu Wanner added, Instructor Zhua, why don't you calm down and think about it? Did they have any intention to test the natural talent and potential of our academy students after they arrived here? No. The only thing they did was plunder everything valuable within the academy and city. The experts of White Deer Academy would naturally not covet what we have, and they would disdain to do something like that. So, there's only a single explanation, and it was that they weren't here to help our academy at all. Elder Zhua, just think about it. What happened to our city after they arrived? Shang Qingying sighed softly. I know that all of you want to return to White Deer Academy, and you want to bring many students there as well. But even if they were telling the truth and we had the chance to join White Deer Academy, is it really right to accept such a path where we have to discard our dignity? In any case, my grandfather would have absolutely not agreed if he was still here. Instructor Zhua fell silent for a long time, and then he shook his head in the end. It doesn't make a difference now. How could it not? Yu Wushuang continued. If you've truly realized your mistakes, then you still have a chance. Instructor Zhua gazed at her and asked, what do you mean? Yu Wushuang pondered deeply for a moment and said, if you still want to return to Ocean of Clouds Academy, then all of you can head to the ancient sword school once you leave the city. I think that they'll definitely be happy to accept all of you. If you don't want to return to the academy, or perhaps you want to take back your authority and control over the academy, then you can head to Sky Divine Hall or somewhere else. That's all I will say. It all depends on your own choice. As soon as she finished speaking, Yu Wushuang turned around and left with Lu Wan'er and Shang Qingying. Instructor Zhuo remained silent on the spot, and he was visibly hesitating and struggling. Meanwhile, Yang Yi was ceaselessly scanning those copper puppets. The copper puppets were covered in scars that seemed like they were left behind by blades. However, Yang Yi was astounded to notice that they were actually repairing themselves, and some comparatively lighter damages had already healed. They can restore themselves? Yang Yi was delighted. Even though these copper puppets weren't as strong as those 10 shadowy figures, they couldn't be underestimated. If he could subdue them, then he would have over 20 Saint Realm puppets. Yang Yi couldn't help but feel excited when he thought of such a possibility. But it didn't take long for him to encounter a problem, and it was the method to control these puppets. Even though they weren't being controlled right now and were standing still on the spot without any intent to resist him, Yang Yi didn't know what to do, because they weren't living beings, so he couldn't refine them like how he'd been refining sword servants. Yang Yi pondered deeply for a while, and then he decided to cut one of them open and see what they were like on the inside. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Suddenly, a voice resounded. "These puppets were forged using special methods belonging to my White Deer Academy. For the sake of preventing our enemies from obtaining them, every single one of these puppets are fitted with a self-destruct mechanism. They'll immediately destroy themselves if you cut them open. This entire city would probably be destroyed by the explosion of a Saint Realm puppet." Yang Yi stopped what he was doing and turned around. He saw a young man in a white robe who held a scroll was standing not too far away from him. Yang Yi gazed at the young man and asked, "White Deer Academy?" The young man nodded slightly. "The scholarly faction, Fang Yun," Yang Yi said, and Fang Yun glanced at Kaiyang Jun and the others' corpses before he spoke. "I'd intended to have a chat with you, but it isn't necessary now. You've killed them, so the law faction won't let the matter rest. No one can save Ocean of Cloud's academy and city now.